Hello everyone. Welcome to the 8th video of economic lecture series. I'm Dr. Arjun Bopanna from Bangalore IAS Academy. This video is brought to you by Mentors for IAS and Namma KPSC Academy. So far we have already discussed the India's tax structure, tax policies, and we have in detail understood the concept of direct taxes, indirect taxes, different types, reforms in both the taxes, that is direct tax reform, that is DTC, and indirect tax reform, that is goods and services tax. Just to recap once again, okay, so we were discussing about the government fiscal policy, or nothing but budget. So budget has two broad heading, that is receipts and expenditure. So receipts are further classified into two types, that is revenue receipt and capital receipts. So what is revenue receipt? Any receipt which does not increase liability or which does not reduce asset is revenue receipt. Anything which either increases the liability or reduces the government's asset is known as capital receipt. So revenue receipt we have discussed. There are two types, tax and non-tax. Tax may we have direct tax and indirect taxes. So we have discussed the different types of direct taxes and also the direct tax reform, that is direct tax code. In indirect taxes we have discussed the different types of indirect taxes and the direct tax reform, that is GST. Now coming to the non-tax revenues. Okay, non-tax revenues includes the following. One is interest receipt. That means the government would have given loan, okay, to say state governments or to any other country or to people, anybody. So the interest that the government receives for the loan it has given, okay, is your revenue receipt. It is non-tax and it is revenue receipt. Similarly, profit and dividends from its various investments in public sector units, etc. Fee, fine for various activities, the fee that they charge, etc. The grants that the government gets, okay, and any other special assessments or tax which is not part of this tax revenue is also part of this non-tax revenue. So there is nothing much to be explained over here. It is self-explanatory. Now moving on to the capital receipt. So capital receipt, anything which either increases liability, that is debt creating. When government takes loan, when government borrows money, it is capital receipt. Okay. Similarly, you have non-debt creating, that is when the government sell away its asset. Let's say the government has its public sector units, okay, like Air India. When it sells, it gets money. So this is your capital asset. It's a lump sum one-time money that the government gets, okay, and it is reducing its assets. So capital receipt can be classified into debt creating and non-debt creating. So here we have loan recovery. That means when the government recovers its loan, this is non-debt creating capital receipt. Why non-debt creating? Because you are recovering your loan that you have given it to the state government. So therefore it is not creating any liability. Similarly, disinvestments, selling away, privatization, etc. This also is not creating any liability. On the other hand, if you see here, borrowings and provident fund, etc., they are creating debt. When the government borrows money, from, let's say, public or from external sources or financial institutions, it is creating liability. Similarly, provident fund, when the government officials, etc., when they earn money, some amount of money is kept as in the provident fund, which is kept in the government. So government has to give interest to them, okay, to the beneficiaries. So therefore it is debt creating, provident fund. If you recollect your polity discussions, okay, if you have read, in that this provident fund, etc., it goes to your public account. Okay, public account. You have an account called as public account. Okay, it's a statutory account, public account, where the money is kept, the government has to give interest to it, etc. Is that understood? So these are capital receipts. So in this we will now discuss, most of the topics here are self-explanatory. What needs to be explained is disinvestment, because this is in news. A little bit more in detail about disinvestments, let's discuss now. So what have you understood about disinvestments? See, disinvestment is when the government sells away its assets, in simple terms. Okay, when government has some business or activity, business activity, it gives away to private or individuals, etc., is known as disinvestments. Now, why is disinvestment in news? The government has decided to, strategically disinvest 23 public sector unit. The motto of the government is that government has no business in being in business. Okay, so it wants to give away the asset so that it can generate revenue, and this revenue can be used, or this receipts can be used for various economic and social activities, including welfare schemes, etc. So government has in the previous years have decided, the present government, the NDA government, decided to disinvest 23 public sector units, including your Air India. Okay, the budget estimate in the year to 2019-20, that is last year's budget, had set a target of 1,05,000 crores. Okay, 1,05,000 crores was the target. They want to, some of them they want to completely sell away, and then others they want to disinvest in parts in equity share, capital held by others. Okay, held by it, right? Then you have in 2020 budget, okay, we have set an ambitious target of 2.1 trillion rupee goal for sale of government holdings in the state-run company. So we want to sell away and earn so much of money by selling away our public sector unit. So in this context, let's discuss some aspects of disinvestments and the various routes that can be used in disinvestments. Now, some of the topics, some of the terms over here, you might not be able to appreciate it right away in this video, but when we do financial sector, okay, when we do capital market, we will be clear with those ideas. Like for example, over here, you can see that there is a term called as equity capital. What is this equity capital, etc.? It will be better if I explain to you when we do financial sector or financial market. Now, coming to the disinvestment policy or disinvestment or term as such. Okay. Now, what is this disinvestment? As I already told you, disinvestment literally means opposite of investment. Okay, disinvestment is a process of reducing the share of government, okay, in its public sector undertaking, PSUs. Okay, so the government has several PSUs. Simple Air India, let's say. Okay, or your best, BSNL, okay, or MTNL, whichever. So these are all public sector units. So when the government reduces its share or sells away its shares to financial institutions, to public at large, to its own employees, etc., this is called as disinvestment. This may include transfer of management, or there may be no transfer of management. Okay, depends on the type of disinvestment policy the government adopts. Either the management itself can be transferred, that is known as privatization, or the management may be with the government, but some share, like 20% of the shares, will be given away to the public. So this is what is the meaning of disinvestment. So opposite of investment, reducing the share of government in public sector undertaking. Now, who is responsible for this disinvestment is the Department of Investment and Public Assessment Management. This is important, you keep this in mind. Okay, so Department of Investment and Public Assessment Management under the Ministry of Finance is responsible, or is the nodal department for the strategic sale of public sector units. The identification as to which public sector units should be disinvested was so far identified by Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog used to identify which public sector units should be disinvested. But now, okay, the Department of Investment and Public Assessment Management along with Niti Aayog jointly identifies PSUs for disinvestments. Okay, this is another point that you might have to keep in mind. Okay, so this is about the process in which disinvestment can occur. So now in the further topics we will discuss the types of disinvestments, what is the advantage and what is the challenges or disadvantage of disinvestment. Before we go into the types and all of disinvestment, one small topic that you have to know in disinvestment is National Investment Fund. What is this National Investment Fund? This National Investment Fund was created in the year 2005. Okay, what is this fund? Basically, all the disinvestment proceeds. Okay, whenever the government undertakes disinvestment, whatever money is generated, would be transferred to this National Investment Fund. This National Investment Fund would exist as public account. It would not be part of your Consolidated Fund of India. It would be kept as public account outside the Consolidated Fund of India. This is another point that you have to remember about National Investment Fund. So till 2008, 2009, 75% of the money in the National Investment Fund would be used for various welfare schemes, centrally sponsored schemes. The 25% of the fund would be used for creation of other capital asset. Okay, like for example, setting up of to meet capital expenditures of other PSUs. Okay, would be used for capital asset creation, setting up of new industries, etc. So this is how the government was spending money from National Investment Fund up to 2008. Since 2008, the government, because 2008, if you recollect, there was recession. So after that, the government wanted more money to be spent on welfare, okay, because it wanted to adopt expansionary fiscal policy. Remember expansionary fiscal policy, we did it in video 2, right? Expansionary fiscal policy was adopted. Government required more money, and therefore it started using 100% of the revenue from the 100% of the NIF fund for social welfare schemes. Presently, the fund which is there in NIF exists as public account, and it is permanent in nature and will remain until it is withdrawn or invested for approved purposes. Okay, as such, it's not being spent on a regular basis. It will be spent on approved basis. So this is two terms that we discussed so far, that is investment and public asset management and National Investment Fund. Okay, now if you look at this diagrammatic representation over here, you will identify that the present government is undertaking disinvestment more than the previous year governments. If you see here, after the 90s, after the economic reforms, the government started aggressively disinvesting its public sector units. But if you see here, in the last few years, okay, couple of years, the disinvestment targets is very high compared to the previous year. So it shows that the present government is more towards private sector, more towards promoting private sector, reducing government's role in business activities, etc. Is that okay? So just to recap, disinvestment means dilution of stakes of government in public enterprises. Now, disinvestment can take place in two ways. One, the disinvestment can be less than 50%. The other one is more than 50%. When the disinvestment is more than 50%, it is called as strategic sale. Okay, strategic sale of our public sector unit. When the disinvestment is less than 50%, government sells only part of its share. It owns the majority share, and therefore it owns the it still runs the company. So the management is still with the government. Whereas in strategic sale, the management gets transferred. The management gets transferred to the private entity. Okay, when the government decides to sell away all its share, entire share of the company is sold, it is known as privatization. So privatization is a type of strategic sale whereby government completely offloads its share in that particular company. And what is strategic sale? When the government not only transfers share but also the management to a private entity, it is known as strategic sale. So this is the two way in which disinvestment does take place. Now, this is from your prelims point of view. From the mains point of view, you also have to analyze the idea of disinvestment. Why disinvestment is good? Why disinvestment is bad? What is the criticism for disinvestment? Now, let's have a look at these ideas. So, why disinvestment? Or why the government is adopting disinvestment? One of the major reasons is resources. So, the government needs money, okay, for building infrastructure, paying away past loans, okay, for welfare programs, schemes, etc. This is the reason why the present government also is planning to sell away the assets, because it needs resources. One of the major reason is because economy is under slowdown, and in this condition, the government has to adopt an expansionary fiscal policy. What is this expansionary fiscal policy? When the government has to spend more than its revenue receives. So when the government has to spend more, it needs money. So it has to either, when it does not get enough money from its taxes and non-tax revenue received, it has to get money from some other source. What are the other two sources? One is debt creating, the other one is non-debt creating, that is disinvestments. So instead of borrowing, the government will decide to sell away the assets so that it can generate resources, and this resource can be used to spend money for welfare schemes, infrastructure, etc. Expansionary fiscal policy to help the economy revive, come out of the slowdown. So this is a valid reason, okay, and it justifies the government selling away its assets. It is also a non-debt creating, right? And another reason why the government is proposing disinvestment is because many of the public sector units are making losses. They have become inefficient. If you take, for example, BSNL, okay, or MTNL, or your Air India. See, these are all public sector units which are making loss. And they are inefficient when compared to other companies in the same sector. Okay, they have become inefficient. Okay, and in order to reduce the losses for the government, because these losses are nothing but revenue expenditure, okay, and revenue expenditure are not creating any asset, nor they are reducing any liability. So therefore the government wants to sell away this assets to reduce the losses, bring in more efficiency. So if private players are part of this companies, they will bring in efficiency, better managerial practices, etc. These companies will be professionally managed because the public sector units have become bureaucratic, filled with red tapeism, etc., constant government interference by its own departments, etc., recruitment, corruption. All this has become a problem of public sector units. So once you privatize, there is expectation that it will be professionally managed and it will start making profit. When they make more profit, they will be investing more, they will be creating more jobs. This will also add more competition in the economy. When there is more competition, there is more efficient utilization of the resources. All this is going to benefit the economy on the long run. It will also attract foreign investment. If you take the example of Air India, many foreign players have shown interest in investing in Air India. So when foreign investments come to India, they will bring in managerial practice, good technology. They will get networked with the global players, global companies. So India will become part of this globalized economy, etc. So foreign investment, why it is good, etc. We will do it in external sector, but bringing foreign investment, bringing dollars into our economy is good. Then it will also reduce state monopoly. Because of state monopoly, okay, there is no competition, etc. So reducing state monopoly through disinvestment is also another objective. So these are the reasons why disinvestment is being undertaken, or the merits of disinvestment. You should also know the disadvantage or the issue, or why there are arguments against disinvestment. Now for this, take the example of your house. So in your house, you might have some gold, you might have land, family property, etc. You might have some other kinds of assets. All these are a kind of an insurance. When something goes wrong, okay, when there is an emergency in your house, you can use these assets, okay, and you can help yourself out of these emergencies. Now imagine if you sell away these assets one by one just to meet your day-to-day expenditures. Okay, what will happen? At the end, when you have real emergency, you will not have any asset and you will end up borrowing money, you might become bankrupt, etc. So therefore, it is always advisable that you keep some asset, or you use asset to create another asset, or you keep this asset as an emergency. Now, what is the government doing? The government is using these assets to spend money on subsidies, on loan waiver, on welfare scheme. If they do it, then it is wrong, because you are not creating any new asset by selling your old asset. Instead, if you sell your asset and create new asset, it is good. So the main argument is that the government is diluting the asset, okay, and without creating any new asset. Further, another criticism is that many of the public sector units, not all public sector units are making loss. There are many public sector units which are making a lot of profit, okay. and these profits are nothing but revenue receipts. Now, when those PSUs you sell away, which generate revenue, then over a period of time, your revenue receipts will be less. So therefore, you try to improve your tax collection, bring about efficiency in your tax collections instead of selling away your asset is the argument. Then, as I told you, it will reduce, public monopoly or government monopoly, but it will be replaced with what? Private monopoly, which is even more dangerous. Imagine if the only private players are, managing the entire sector. They will be dictating the prices. They will be controlling the resources, etc. So it is very dangerous. I mean, it is going to affect the consumer welfare because they are mainly private is mainly focused on profits. At least public sector, they are oriented towards welfare. These people will be private profit oriented. This will lead to higher price, lower level of output, employment, etc. They will not care about creating jobs. They will instead of hiring people, they will invest in machines which will replace labor, okay, so that it is cost less, etc. So it might not actually generate more employment is the argument. I told you disinvestment will actually create more efficiency and it will create more profits, therefore more investment, therefore more jobs. But on the other hand, if these private players decide that we will not hire more people, now let's say Air India. So Air India, once are taken over by the private, they will start letting off people and there is going to be job loss. Okay, they will invest in automation. I mean, in a way it is good, but at the same time it is going to lead to a lot of loss of job, which is not good for the welfare. Okay, if you talk about the history of disinvestments were if you talk about the public sector units in the 50s and 60s, government involved in business activity and started investing in public sector units mainly for job creation, especially in backward areas. The government wanted to invest and create more jobs because there were no private players who were coming forward to create jobs. So government started setting up big public sector units to create jobs. Now the same public sector units are sold away. It will lead to a lot of job losses. Okay, then one more objective is that it will lead to efficiency, okay, higher productivity. It may not always be true. Private players doesn't mean that they will always be efficient, more productive. If you see aviation sector, private players like your Kingfisher Airlines, etc., they actually were inefficient and therefore they made loss, and this led to lot of productivity loss, right? So therefore private does not guarantee efficiency. There is a job loss, low job creation. They will be mainly capital intensive. And we are selling away Air India because they are making loss. But privatization is not always the solution for loss-making PSUs. Instead, bring about reforms. Okay, bring about administrative reforms. Give them more autonomy. One example of what government is doing is corporatization. Okay, they are corporatizing the public sector unit. That means they are giving more autonomy to these public sector units and allowing them to have more independence in terms of appointment, decisions, etc., thereby making them more efficient. This can be done instead of privatization, completely giving away to private sector. So therefore that also is an argument against disinvestment. Then we are talking only in terms of economy when we are talking about disinvestment. What about the social objectives? Okay, the social objectives like regional balance, because if you see the history of public sector units, they were created mainly in backward areas, set up in backward areas in order to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor regions. Okay, many private sector, they were concentrated only in Bombay, Madras and other industrial towns. Now public sector units, okay, were set up in the backward regions to help regional development. Okay, so now we are totally rejecting that and saying that private is the best, which is not always good. So these are the argument against disinvestment. So with that, we end this topic on disinvestment. There is a small topics that are still left out with respect to disinvestment, that is how this disinvestment is done. So there are various concepts relating to that, which would be better if I explain to you when I do financial sector, a financial institution like for capital market, etc. So disinvestment can be done either through IPO, that is initial public offering, or FPO, that is follow-on public offering, OFS, that is offer for sale, Then you might have also read in your current affairs exchange traded fund, an example of which is Bharat bond. All these are methods of disinvestments. Okay, so this I will be explaining to you when I do capital market. Other than that, what I have discussed today is about disinvestment, and you will be able to relate it with current affairs and better understand your current affairs issue, etc., when you read your budget. From your NCRT, please go through the history of public sector unit, PSUs, that means in the 50s, 60s, etc., how it was done. In your NCRT, you also would have done the economic reform, that is 90s, what happened. So this will help you to also get an idea about industrial policy in India. Okay, which since we are doing it specifically from the fiscal point of view, I'm not going into those details. Okay, so this completes our receipts. Okay, we completes our receipts in our budget. So as I told you, budget is divided into receipts and expenditure. So with this, we complete receipt. In the next video, we will be talking about expenditure. So expenditure, you have your revenue, expenditure, and capital expenditure, which we will be discussing in the next video. I hope you understood what we discussed today. If you like our videos, please do subscribe and like and other things. If you need an economy book, in the description section, you have my economic book. You can download it and you can read along with these videos. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.